take me to a real Canadian superstore.
He's allied himself with the Republicans for years, and they've been much more inclined to be much more supportive of him, even though they're...
Yeah, and that's the question, I think. I mean, is he just hanging on in the hopes that Donald Trump wins? We know Vice President Kamala Harris wasn't at the address to Congress yesterday, citing a previous engagement. What is his game plan? I mean, is he just waiting it out and waiting the Democrats out in the hopes that there is a Republican administration next?
Well, you're not a Middle East analyst, Rebecca, but you broke the code here. I think that's exactly right. You're buying time. I mean, again, I come back to the stakes for this man. This is the answer about legacy. The guy presided over the single bloodiest day for Jews since the end of the Nazi Holocaust, and the greatest intelligence in the history of the state of Israel. And yet he's still prime minister. And yes, he's buying time. He's waiting. He's hoping. And right now, I cannot foresee a set of circumstances in which elections won't happen until probably early 2025. So, yeah, he'll be around as prime minister more than likely on November 5 when Americans go to the polls. And he will adjust his strategy, presumably accordingly. So, yes, he's waiting for Trump. But Trump's no guarantee. Trump instrumentalizes his relationships. If you're not useful to Donald Trump, then you're no longer a bright, shiny object. And Mr. Netanyahu needs to be aware that Donald Trump's been exceedingly critical of Netanyahu over the last several years, and they've had no contact. So we'll see what happens when he makes his pilgrimage to Mar-a-Lago tomorrow. But just keep in the back of your mind that the real significance of what you're watching right now is not what's been achieved. It's what this visit reflects. And what it reflects, I think, is a strain, maybe a fracture, of much of the bipartisanship that has sustained the a healthy U.S. relationship based on mutual respect and reciprocity with an Israeli prime minister who didn't fight the United States every step of the way and understood that American interests had to be protected as well. That whole relationship, Democrats and Republicans, that doesn't exist right now. You've got Republicans, the Israel Can Do No Wrong Party, and a Democratic Party deeply divided on the essential question of what it means to be pro-Israel if you're a Democrat. And,
I was just going to say, I'm curious where you think, I mean, you know, we talked about if Donald Trump is president, but what if Kamala Harris is president? What is her take on this, and is it different than Joe Biden's?
No, I think her inner Kamala she's a distant generation of Joe Biden. She's not going to describe herself as he does, as a Christian Zionist or a non-Jewish Zionist. She's married to a Jewish man who was staunchly pro-Israel, and she herself is a moderate mainstream Democrat who who I think has a high regard, let me be very clear, high regard for the security of Israel, the people of Israel, and even the idea of Israel. But she's not Joe Biden. She doesn't have that history. It goes back decades with almost every single Israeli prime minister. She's of a different generation, focuses more on human rights, on diversity, on anti-discrimination. So I think she and her public comments over the last year have been pretty tough-minded. But she's going to have to operate in the same, what I call the U.S.-Israeli operating system, which is still operating. You have a lot of support in this country still, not just among American Jews, 5-6 million American Jews, but among millions of evangelical Christians who, for reasons of value, affinity, and eschatology, Israel's place in the end of time, end of days, for Israel. So she's going to have to take that into account. It's hard for me to foresee if she becomes president, given the challenges that she's going to face during her first year, and depending on who takes the House and the Senate, that she's going to want to, as very few of her predecessors as presidents want to, pick a fight and get into a major sustained breach with an Israeli prime minister. It's not good politics. That is not good policy.
Aaron David Miller, clearly we could talk for longer, but we've run out of time. Thank you for this morning.
Thank you, Rebecca. Great questions, and you also gave me the time to answer them, which I really appreciate.
Okay, take care.
You too, bye.
Aaron David Miller is a senior fellow at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace and a former U.S. State Department Mideast peace negotiator. Getting to the town of Norman Wells in the Sahtu region of the Northwest Territories is not easy. Flying is the only all-season way in. In the colder months, there is a winter road, and in the summer, massive barges come down the Mackenzie River, bringing everything from food to building supplies and vital fuel.
It's a lifeline. It's a lifeblood. Because it hauls such a large capacity, the freight cost is cheaper. Once you start flying it, or in smaller quantities like a winter road, the price increases. The barge is a lifeline.
But climate change is taking a toll on this vital infrastructure. 2 communities in the Northwest Territories will not receive barge deliveries this year. And that's because of low water levels on the Mackenzie River. Frank Pope is the mayor of Norman Wells. Good morning.
Hi, good morning, Rebecca. Nice to talk to you.
You as well. Frank, let's start with these barges. How many came to Norman Wells this summer?
This summer, not a one. There is insufficient water for navigation. The Coast Guard have already declared it this spring non-navigable. Therefore, there will be no traffic at all on what we call our summer highway. The Mackenzie River, up to now, has been our highway for summer traffic and for resupplying our communities.
In a good year, how many barges should show up in the summer?
I think when we had the government barges out of the river, we had an independent system coming out of Fort Simpson Cooper Barge